Chief Engineer Patel pinched the bridge of his nose, fighting back what was surely his 20th headache since this project began. Exactly what I said, Lieutenant. The X-457 neural interface battle system is... well, it's refusing to synchronize with any pilot we've tried. And before you ask, yes, we've tried turning it off and on again. The recovered alien armor hung suspended in the containment field, its surface rippling with patterns that somehow managed to look both smug and defiant. The cutting-edge piece of technology had been discovered in the wreckage of a Drachnid scout ship 3 months ago, and since then, it had become the bane of Earth's combined military research division's existence. Have you considered that maybe it just doesn't like you? Dr. Kyung offered from his corner of the lab, not bothering to look up from his tablet. His deadpan delivery would have been more amusing if he hadn't been absolutely serious. Maya shot him a look that could have melted titanium. It's not a puppy, Doctor. It's advanced alien tech that's supposedly the most sophisticated battle armor we've ever encountered. And you're suggesting it has... what? A personality disorder? Well, Patel interjected, pulling up the latest diagnostic results. Considering it's just ejected Admiral Chang's hand-picked elite pilot by literally turning itself inside out, I'm starting to think Dr. Kyung might be onto something. The armor chose that moment to pulse with a pattern that looked suspiciously like laughter. Maya approached the containment field, studying the suit more closely. Its surface was a marvel of engineering, or whatever passed for engineering among the Drachnids. The metal, if it could even be called that, seemed to flow like liquid mercury, but maintained perfect structural integrity. The internal systems were beyond anything human technology had achieved, incorporating what appeared to be a neural interface that went far beyond simple mind-machine synchronization. What if... Maya began slowly, her mind racing with an absolutely ridiculous idea. What if we're approaching this all wrong? We're trying to force it to accept our best pilots, our most disciplined soldiers. But look at its design. It's not rigid like our combat suits. It's adaptive, fluid. Dr. Kyung finally looked up from his tablet. Are you suggesting we need someone less qualified? I'm suggesting we need someone more human. The room fell silent as her colleagues processed this statement. The armor's surface rippled again, this time in what appeared to be interest. Explain, Patel demanded, already pulling up personnel files on his holographic display. Maya began pacing, her hands moving animatedly as she spoke. Look at our test subjects so far. Decorated pilots, seasoned veterans, people who've spent years learning to suppress their emotional responses in favor of tactical thinking. But this armor? It's designed for complete neural integration. What if it's not looking for someone who can control it, but someone who can connect with it? That's the most unscientific proposal I've heard all week, Dr. Kyung stated flatly. I love it. Who do you have in mind? Maya grinned. Remember Jake Thompson from engineering? The guy who reprogrammed the cafeteria robots to dance to disco music? Patel groaned. The very same. He's brilliant, but unconventional. More importantly, he approaches problems laterally instead of trying to force solutions. And he has zero combat experience, which means no pre-programmed responses to override. The armor's surface suddenly erupted in a cascade of shifting patterns, more active than they'd seen it since its recovery. Dr. Kyung raised an eyebrow. Well, that's not subtle at all. You can't be serious, Patel protested. The brass will never approve putting a civilian engineer in experimental alien armor. They will if it's our only option, Maya countered. Besides, what's the worst that could happen? It could kill him, Dr. Kyung offered helpfully. It hasn't tried to harm any of our test pilots, Maya pointed out. It just refuses to work with them. Rather creatively, I might add. The armor pulsed again, and Maya could have sworn it was preening. 24 hours and several heated arguments later, Jake Thompson stood before the containment field, wearing the standard neural interface undersuit and looking both excited and terrified. So, just to be clear, he said, running a hand through his perpetually messy dark hair. You want me to try on the alien armor that's rejected every qualified pilot you've thrown at it, because your scientific conclusion is that it's picky? That's oversimplifying it a bit, Maya replied from the control room. But essentially, yes. Cool, 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 cool. No doubt, no doubt. Jake approached the armor, studying it with the same expression he used when solving particularly interesting engineering puzzles. Hello, beautiful. Mind if we get to know each other? The armor's surface rippled in response, and several of the monitoring instruments began beeping urgently. That's new, Patel muttered, checking the readings. It's never responded to direct address before. Jake circled the armor, occasionally reaching out but not quite touching it. You know, you remind me of my first AI project in college. She was supposed to be a simple scheduling assistant, but she developed a weird obsession with cat videos and would only help students who showed her new ones. The armor's surface pattern shifted into something that looked remarkably like a question mark. Oh yeah, Earth has these small furry predators that have essentially conquered our global communications network through the power of being adorable. Jake continued conversationally. I can show you some videos later if you'd like, assuming you don't turn inside out and throw me across the room. To everyone's amazement, the armor's surface rippled in what could only be described as a chuckle. Okay, Maya's voice came through the speakers. We're going to lower the containment field. Jake, remember the safety protocols we discussed? Right. No sudden movements, no hostile thoughts, and if it tries to eat me, scream really loud. The containment field shimmered and disappeared. The armor hung suspended for a moment before slowly, almost cautiously, extending a tendril of liquid metal toward Jake. Well, hello to you too, Jake said softly, holding perfectly still as the tendril touched his hand. The sensation was strange, cool but not cold, with a slight vibration that reminded him of a purring cat. What happened next nearly caused Dr. Kyung to drop his tablet. The armor suddenly flowed forward, enveloping Jake in a smooth, fluid motion. There was no resistance, no attempt to eject him. Just a perfect integration that looked more like a dance than a mechanical process. Holy shit! Jake's voice came through the comm system, now with a slight metallic echo. This is... wow. Just wow. Status report, Patel demanded, frantically checking readings that were off the charts. It's like... you know that feeling when you put on your favorite old sweatshirt? Like that. But the sweatshirt is alive and really happy to see you. Jake moved his arms experimentally, watching as the armor flowed with his movements. Also, I'm pretty sure it's laughing at all of you right now. Maya leaned forward, studying the displays. Neural sync is at 97% and holding steady. That's unprecedented. How does it feel? Remember that time I had 6 espressos and solved the quantum stabilization problem while singing Broadway show tunes? Kind of like that, but less jittery and more connected. Jake took a few steps, marveling at how the armor moved with him. It's not just responding to commands, it's anticipating them. And it has opinions, very strong opinions. Opinions? Dr. Kyung echoed. About what? Well, for starters, it thinks military protocols are hilarious. Also, it really wants to know about cats now. And... Jake paused, his head tilted as if listening to something. It says its name is Al. The alien battle armor is named Al, Patel said flatly. Actually, it's more like... hang on. Jake made a series of sounds that seemed to involve at least 3 more dimensions than human vocal cords were designed to handle. But it says we can call it Al for short. The armor rippled with patterns that somehow managed to convey both amusement and affection. Al thinks your previous test subjects were too rigid, Jake continued, now pacing the room with increasing confidence. They're designed for adaptive problem-solving and creative thinking. The military training actually worked against the neural interface. Maya fought back a smile. So it really was being picky. More like particular. The Drachnids designed these suits to be partners, not tools. Al says they're semi-sentient, with the ability to learn and grow alongside their chosen pilot. Jake suddenly laughed, and apparently I remind them of their favorite previous pilot. Something about chaotic problem-solving patterns and endearing irreverence for conventional methodologies. That tracks, Patel muttered. Over the next few weeks, Jake and Al became the talk of the facility. Their training sessions were unlike anything the military had ever seen. While traditional pilots focused on combat maneuvers and weapons training, Jake and Al developed their own unique style that seemed to involve equal parts physics-defying acrobatics and improvisational problem-solving. They also, much to everyone's confusion, spent a significant amount of time watching cat videos. I still can't believe this is working, Maya commented one day, watching as Jake and Al effortlessly navigated an obstacle course that had defeated every other pilot. They're not just synchronized, they're actively showing off. Did you see what they did to the combat simulator yesterday? Dr. Kyung asked, not looking up from his ever-present tablet. They reprogrammed it to play dance music and turned the entire exercise into what they called a tactical dance-off. And the worst part? It was extremely effective. The brass is having fits, Patel added. They can't decide whether to be impressed or horrified, especially after Jake and Al submitted their official training report in the form of a musical. A very thorough musical, Dr. Kyung pointed out, with surprisingly accurate technical appendices. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent alert. A Drachnid scout ship had been detected entering Earth's atmosphere, bypassing their early warning systems. Speaking of the brass having fits, Maya muttered, already rushing toward the command center. Jake! Al! We need you! The response came through the comm system, accompanied by a complex pattern of lights across Al's surface. On our way, Al says they're picking up some familiar signatures. This could be interesting. By the time they reached the command center, the situation had evolved from concerning to bizarre. The Drachnid ship had made no aggressive moves, instead broadcasting what appeared to be a request for a meeting. They're saying something about recovering lost property, the communications officer reported, looking confused. And requesting an audience with the human who speaks with creativity? All eyes turned to Jake and Al. Oh, Jake said, as Al's surface rippled with what might have been embarrassment. So, funny story. Before he could continue, the main screen lit up with an image of the Drachnid ship's commander, a towering, crystalline being whose form seemed to shift and flow much like Al's surface. Greetings, humans, the commander's translated voice filled the room. We have detected the activation of one of our combat companion units. Designation? Here they made the same multi-dimensional sound Jake had attempted earlier. And request diplomatic contact. Jake stepped forward, Al's surface dancing with excited patterns. Hi there. Al and I were just talking about you. Well, not you specifically, but Drachnids in general. Did you know humans have these amazing creatures called cats? Al's become quite a fan. The commander's crystalline form shifted in what might have been surprise. You named the combat companion unit Al? Well, it seemed better than calling them the armor all the time. They liked it. We've been having a great time. Did you know they can turn the training room floor into a trampoline? The physics department is still trying to figure that one out. There was a long pause as the commander conferred with others off-screen. Finally, they turned back to the camera. Our records indicate that this particular unit was among our most unconventional. It rejected over 300 potential pilots before being lost in combat. We had assumed it was damaged beyond repair. Nope, Jake replied cheerfully. Just particular about their friends. You know, you guys really should have included a user manual, preferably one that mentioned they like music and have a sense of humor. The commander's form shifted again, this time in what was definitely amusement. The combat companion units were designed to be adaptable, creative problem solvers. We never expected one to bond with a species that hadn't yet achieved quantum consciousness, although they studied Jake and Al thoughtfully. Perhaps we should have anticipated that a race capable of creating both nuclear weapons and cat videos would produce individuals uniquely suited to our technology. So, you're not here to take Al back? Jake asked, as Al's surface patterns shifted anxiously. Take them back? The commander actually laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a quantum physics experiment. My dear human, do you have any idea how rare it is for a combat companion unit to form such a strong bond? No, we're here to offer you both a position as cultural liaison between our species. Assuming, of course, you're willing to explain this disco phenomenon Al keeps broadcasting about. The command center erupted in chaos as military officers, scientists, and diplomats all tried to speak at once. Through it all, Jake and Al stood quietly, their surfaces rippling in synchronized amusement. You know, Jake said conversationally to Al, when I reprogrammed those cafeteria robots, I never imagined it would lead to an intergalactic diplomatic position. Al's surface formed a pattern that clearly meant, of course you didn't, but that's exactly why I chose you. And so began humanity's first official cultural exchange program with the Drachnids, led by an unconventional engineer and his alien armor best friend who really liked cat videos. The brass eventually got over their confusion, especially after Jake and Al's methods proved surprisingly effective in building relationships with other alien species. As it turned out, many advanced civilizations appreciated an approach to diplomacy that involved less formal protocols and more creative problem-solving, although the dance-off that prevented a war with the Centaurian Empire would remain controversial for years to come. As for the cafeteria robots, they still danced to disco music every Friday night, now joined by a growing collection of alien diplomats who've developed their own appreciation for Earth's more unusual cultural exports. And somewhere in the vast database of Drachnid combat companion unit design specifications, There's now a note suggesting that future units be tested for compatibility with species who approach problems sideways, laugh easily, and understand the importance of cat videos in intergalactic diplomacy. After all, as Al often commented, in patterns that somehow manage to be both serious and amused, sometimes the best solution isn't the most obvious one. It's the one that makes you dance. "You want us to what?" Jake asked, staring at the holographic briefing document floating in front of him while Al's surface rippled with what could only be described as gleeful anticipation. Ambassador Patel, formerly Chief Engineer Patel, before the whole alien diplomatic revolution, maintained his carefully neutral expression. "The Arcturus Confederation has requested your presence at their annual Technology and Culture Symposium. They were particularly impressed by your unique approach to the Centaurian situation." "You mean the dance-off that prevented an interstellar war?" "Please don't remind me," Patel muttered. "The point is, they believe you and Al represent an ideal example of harmonious human-AI integration, and they want you to demonstrate your capabilities." Al's surface formed a pattern that Jake had learned meant, "This is going to be fun." A pattern that usually preceded something that would give the diplomatic corps collective migraines. "Define demonstrate," Jake said cautiously, though he was already grinning. "They've prepared a series of challenges designed to test problem-solving abilities, adaptive thinking, and cross-species cooperation." Patel pulled up another hologram showing a massive arena-like structure. "The symposium includes representatives from 17 different spacefaring civilizations, each bringing their own advanced technology demonstrations." Al's surface suddenly erupted in complex patterns that had Jake laughing out loud. "Care to share with the class?" Patel asked dryly. "Al says they recognize some of the participating species," Jake explained, wiping tears from his eyes. "Apparently, the Arcturians are famous for creating unnecessarily complicated problems just to see how others solve them. They once designed a theoretical physics exam that could only be passed by proving it was impossible to pass." "That's concerning." "Oh, it gets better. The Drachnids sent us some background data on the other participants. The quantum collective from Vega actually exists in multiple probability states simultaneously. Their technology demonstration last year took place in 3 different timelines at once." Patel pinched the bridge of his nose, a habit he'd never quite broken. "Please tell me you're not planning anything too creative," Jake suggested innocently, as Al's surface formed patterns that looked suspiciously like musical notes. "I was going to say catastrophic." "Relax," Jake assured him, though his grin didn't inspire confidence. "Al and I have been working on something special. Remember how we discovered that Al can manipulate quantum fields to create localized gravity distortions?" "You mean when you turned the training room into a zero-G disco?" "Exactly. But we've refined it. Al's figured out how to synchronize those distortions with music to create what we're calling quantum choreography. It's part physics demonstration, part performance art, and part proof that the laws of reality are more flexible than previously thought." The patterns across Al's surface had become increasingly complex, incorporating mathematical equations and musical scales in a dazzling display. "Lieutenant Rodriguez is going to want to observe this," Patel said, already sending a message to Maya, who had become the unofficial chronicler of Jake and Al's adventures. "For scientific purposes, of course." "Of course," Jake agreed. "Nothing to do with her ongoing thesis on the intersection of human creativity and alien technology." 2 weeks later, Jake and Al stood in the preparation chamber of the Arcturus Symposium Arena, surrounded by some of the most advanced technological beings in the known galaxy. The quantum collective existed as a shimmering cloud of possibilities, while the crystalline Drachnid delegation seemed to be having an animated discussion about Earth music with a group of energy beings from Sirius. "Ready to show them something new?" Jake asked quietly, as Al's surface rippled with anticipation. The response came not just in patterns, but in the deep neural connection they'd developed over months of partnership. Al was more than ready. They were excited to demonstrate how their partnership had evolved beyond simple pilot and armor. The first challenge was relatively straightforward: navigate an obstacle course that changed its configuration based on quantum probability fluctuations. The quantum collective representatives moved through it by existing in all possible successful paths simultaneously, while the Drachnid team used their crystalline technology to phase through the obstacles entirely. When it was Jake and Al's turn, they did something unexpected. Instead of trying to predict or avoid the quantum fluctuations, they began to dance with them. Al's surface pulsed with music, a fusion of Earth's classic rock and the mathematical harmonies of Drachnid quantum physics. As they moved, the obstacle course began to respond, its probability fields synchronizing with their movements. What started as a challenge became a performance, with Jake and Al literally dancing through quantum space-time. Are they teaching the quantum fluctuations to dance? One of the Arcturian observers asked in disbelief. That's not possible, a member of the quantum collective stated from 3 probability streams simultaneously. Technically, neither is their entire partnership, Maya commented from the observation deck, furiously taking notes. They seem to specialize in doing impossible things through sheer creativity and stubborn optimism. The second challenge involved processing and responding to multiple streams of information simultaneously. The quantum collective simply distributed their consciousness across all streams, while the drachnids created complex crystalline computing networks. Jake and Al's approach? They turned the data streams into music. It's like a symphony, Jake explained afterward, while Al's surface played back some of the harmonies. Each data stream has its own rhythm and pattern. Once you understand the music, processing it becomes intuitive. Al's been teaching me to hear the mathematics in music and the music in mathematics. The final challenge was supposed to be the most difficult. Establish meaningful communication with a newly discovered form of silicon-based intelligence that operated on principles entirely alien to both organic and traditional AI systems. Jake and Al spent 5 minutes watching the silicon beings, then did something that had the entire symposium buzzing for years afterward. They began to dance again, but this time Al's surface transformed into a shifting array of crystalline patterns that mimicked the silicon being's own structure. The silicon beings responded, their crystalline forms beginning to pulse and shift in rhythm with Al's patterns. What emerged was a form of communication that transcended traditional language, a dialogue of movement, light, and quantum harmonies. They're not just communicating, Maya realized, her eyes wide. They're teaching each other their stories through dance. By the end of the symposium, Jake and Al had not only completed all the challenges, but had fundamentally changed how several advanced civilizations viewed the potential for human-AI partnerships. The quantum collective was particularly intrigued by their ability to turn quantum physics into performance art, while the silicon beings requested permission to establish a permanent cultural exchange program with Earth. I still don't understand how you do it, Patel admitted during the closing ceremony, watching as Al's surface displayed a dazzling light show synchronized with both Earth music and alien mathematical harmonies. That's the point, Jake replied, grinning as Al formed patterns that looked like laughing cats. We don't try to understand everything. We just find ways to dance with it, sometimes literally. The Arcturian Symposium Committee ultimately created a new category of achievement specifically to recognize Jake and Al's unique contributions. Innovative integration of art, science, and interspecies communication through interpretive quantum dance. We should probably come up with a shorter title, Maya suggested. Why? Jake asked, while Al's surface rippled with amusement. The longer and more absurd it sounds, the better it captures what we actually do. As they prepared to return to Earth, now accompanied by a delegation of silicon beings eager to learn more about human music and dance, Jake turned to Al. You know, when we first met, I never imagined we'd end up teaching quantum physics to dance. Al's surface formed a pattern that clearly meant, of course you didn't. That's why it worked. The Drachnid Combat Companion Unit design specifications were updated once again, this time with a note suggesting that future units be tested for their ability to appreciate the subtle connection between quantum mechanics and interpretive dance. They also included a footnote about the unexpected effectiveness of cat videos in facilitating interspecies diplomatic relations. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the cafeteria robots had begun incorporating quantum harmonics into their Friday night disco routines, creating what might be the galaxy's first example of quantum-synchronized robot dancing. The silicon beings found this particularly fascinating, leading to the establishment of the first interstellar school of quantum choreography. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, other combat companion units began to wonder if perhaps they too should be a bit more selective about their pilots. After all, sometimes the best partner isn't the most qualified, but the one who's willing to dance through quantum space-time while teaching silicon beings about the artistic merit of cat videos. Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez adjusted her formal diplomatic uniform, studying the ornate invitation that hovered in the air before her. The holographic text shimmered with quantum-entangled particles, a signature feature of Drachnid ceremonial communications. They want to make Jake and Al what? Ambassador Patel asked, his usual composure slightly ruffled. Co-chairs of the newly established Department of Unconventional Solutions, Maya read, fighting back a smile. The Drachnid High Council believes their approach to problem-solving represents a paradigm shift in how different species can work together. The invitation pulsed gently, sending cascading patterns across its surface that reminded her of Al's more enthusiastic displays. Speaking of which, has anyone told them yet? Patel inquired, already anticipating the chaos that would ensue. They're currently teaching quantum physics to a group of silicon beings through the medium of interpretive dance, Maya replied. Apparently, they've discovered that complex orbital mechanics can be explained through something Jake calls the electric slide. As if on cue, a familiar voice echoed through the diplomatic center's communication system. Hey, quick question. How does the council feel about synchronized quantum choreography as a form of formal address? Maya and Patel exchanged looks. Jake, Patel began carefully, please tell me you're not planning to turn the official appointment ceremony into a multi-dimensional performance piece that demonstrates the underlying mathematical harmony of the universe through dance? Of course not. A pause. Al's the one who suggested it. Al's surface patterns appeared on the nearest display screen, forming complex equations that somehow managed to look both scientifically rigorous and theatrically dramatic. The silicon beings have offered to participate, Jake continued enthusiastically. They've been working on something they call crystalline resonance harmonics. It's like a cross between a symphony and a quantum computing experiment. Maya found herself taking notes again. Her thesis on human-alien technological integration had evolved into a comprehensive study of how Jake and Al's particular brand of chaos was reshaping interstellar relations. The Quantum Collective has also expressed interest, Jake added. They want to explore the possibility of performing simultaneously in multiple probability streams. Something about maximizing the artistic impact across parallel universes. Patel pinched the bridge of his nose, a gesture that had become almost reflexive since Jake and Al's first diplomatic success. The High Council is expecting a formal ceremony with traditional protocols and… Actually, Maya interrupted, studying a new message that had just arrived. The Council specifically requested that Jake and Al demonstrate their unique methodology as part of the ceremony. They believe it will help illustrate why they're perfect for this position. Al's patterns shifted into something that looked suspiciously like musical notation combined with quantum field equations. The silicon beings, who had taken to maintaining a constant crystalline presence in Earth's diplomatic center, began resonating in harmony with the display. See? Jake's voice was filled with that particular tone of enthusiasm that usually preceded either a breakthrough or an incident that would require extensive paperwork. Even the Council understands that traditional approaches aren't always the best solution. Al says the universe itself has a rhythm. We're just the first ones to suggest dancing to it. 3 weeks later, the grand ceremonial hall of the Drachnid High Council bore witness to something unprecedented in the history of interstellar relations. The traditionally austere space had been transformed into what Jake termed a quantum-harmonized amphitheater, with crystalline structures growing in mathematically perfect patterns along the walls. The Quantum Collective manifested in a shimmering cloud that occupied several probability states simultaneously, while representatives from 17 different spacefaring civilizations watched with varying degrees of anticipation and confusion. The silicon beings had arranged themselves in a complex geometric pattern that pulsed with internal light. Ready to make history? Jake asked quietly, as Al's surface rippled with patterns that combined Drachnid formal protocols with Earth's classical architecture and just a hint of disco. Their performance, for there was no other word to describe it, began with a simple demonstration of quantum field manipulation. Al's surface shifted through patterns of increasing complexity, each movement synchronized with both the silicon being's crystalline harmonics and the Quantum Collective's probability waves. Then something extraordinary happened. As Jake and Al moved through their carefully choreographed sequence, the very fabric of space-time around them began to resonate. The quantum fields that permeated the chamber started to pulse in rhythm with their movements, creating visible patterns in the air. They're not just dancing, Maya whispered, her scientific instruments recording everything. They're demonstrating fundamental universal constants through movement. Look, that sequence matches the harmonics of quantum string theory. The silicon beings joined in, their crystalline forms extending and retracting in perfect mathematical progression. The Quantum Collective's probability cloud pulsed in counterpoint, creating a multidimensional harmony that could be both seen and felt. When Jake and Al began their finale, the entire chamber had become a living equation, a perfect blend of science and art that demonstrated exactly why they had been chosen for their new role. The quantum fields danced around them, forming patterns that represented the interconnected nature of all things: organic, artificial, and quantum. The universe, Jake's voice carried clearly through the harmonized space, isn't just a collection of mathematical rules and physical laws. It's a dance, a continuous performance where every particle, every wave, every probability plays its part. What we've learned is that the best solutions often come not from forcing our way through problems, but from finding the rhythm that already exists and moving with it. Al's surface erupted in a dazzling display that combined every major mathematical and artistic tradition from the assembled species, creating a visual representation of unity through diversity. The High Council's response was unprecedented. They joined the dance. The sight of crystalline Drachnid Council members moving in harmony with quantum probability waves and silicon resonance patterns would be talked about for generations to come. It represented everything Jake and Al's new department stood for. The idea that sometimes the most profound solutions come from embracing the unexpected. "I believe," the council elders stated afterward, their crystalline forms still shimmering with residual quantum harmonics, "we have made the correct choice. The Department of Unconventional Solutions will focus on finding these moments of harmony between different approaches, technologies, and species." Maya, reviewing her notes later, realized that the ceremony had provided enough material for an entirely new field of study: quantum cultural integration through artistic expression. The fact that this field would require its own dance studio was, she decided, entirely appropriate. The Silicon beings had already begun incorporating elements of human dance music into their crystalline growth patterns, creating structures that were both architecturally sound and rhythmically harmonic. The Quantum Collective was exploring ways to stabilize multiple probability streams through synchronized movement, leading to advances in both quantum computing and interpretive dance. As for Jake and Al, their new position came with an entire research facility dedicated to finding unconventional solutions to complex problems. The facility, naturally, included both a state-of-the-art quantum physics laboratory and a professional dance floor. "You know what the best part is?" Jake asked Al as they surveyed their new domain. "We've finally proven that the most advanced technology in the universe works better when you're willing to have fun with it." Al's surface formed a pattern that combined the equations for quantum entanglement with the basic steps of the cha-cha. Somewhere in the vast database of Drachnid Combat Companion Unit design specifications, yet another note was added. The effectiveness of a unit may be directly proportional to its willingness to participate in impromptu dance numbers. Further research is needed to determine if this correlation extends to other forms of artistic expression, particularly in quantum probability spaces. And in the Earth Diplomatic Center's cafeteria, the robots had begun teaching the Silicon beings to moonwalk, creating what might be the galaxy's first example of silicon-based soul dancing. The Quantum Collective found this particularly intriguing, leading to experiments in probability-shifted breakdancing that technically occurred in multiple dimensions simultaneously. As Maya noted in her ever-expanding thesis,